Welcome, everybody. We are going to get started here in just a moment. In the meantime, you do have access to the chat. And if you want to go ahead and put your name and your organization and your favorite place in Vermont to recreate in the chat, we'd love to know more about who's here. And we'll be getting started here around 4:30, just about 6 minutes. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 2021 Outdoor Recreation Grant Funding Information Meeting. We're going to be getting started here in just a couple minutes, but you do have access to the chat. And while you're waiting, if you want to go ahead and put your name and your organization and your favorite place in Vermont to recreate, we'd love to know more about who's here. We'll be getting started here in about 4 minutes. I think we had a couple of new people join. If you just joined, we're getting started here in a couple minutes. You do have access to the chat, so I'd have a little prompt here on the screen. When you're ready, if you want to go ahead and put your name and your organization and your favorite place in Vermont to recreate, we'd love to know more about who's joining. And we're going to get started here in just a few minutes. If you just joined the meeting, welcome. While other folks are entering, I'm just prompting people to put some information in the chat. When you're ready, you can go ahead and drop your name and your organization and your favorite place in Vermont to recreate. And we'll be getting started here pretty shortly. We do have some text support this evening. If you don't, by any chance, maybe something you don't have access to the chat, we do have Caroline Zelinga here helping us with text support. She is going to drop her information in the chat, and I will just scroll forward here. We're getting started in a minute, but just so you have that information in case you're having trouble. Her cell phone number and her email address is on the screen there. And I would encourage you to copy it down in case anything goes wrong during the meeting and you need to reach her. And for those who just joined the meeting, welcome. We're getting started here in a minute. You should have access to the chat, but if you don't for any reason, we do have Caroline Zelinga here as tech support tonight, and her contact information is up on the screen. All right, it looks like we still have some people rolling in. I'm going to give it just another minute before we get started. For those that just joined us, welcome. You should have access to the chat. And when you're ready, we'd love to know more about who's here, so you can go ahead and drop your name and your organization and share your favorite place in Vermont to recreate with us. Looks like we still have some people joining. Welcome to everyone who just signed in. We are going to get started here in just a moment. We're just waiting for people to finish joining. And I'll give it just one more minute. So to everyone who just joined, welcome. We're getting started here in a minute. This is the 2021 Outdoor Recreation Grant Funding Information Meeting. And when you're ready, you can go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat by dropping your name and your organization and sharing your favorite place in Vermont to recreate. Welcome. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. We have a good group of people here. Like I said, I think I saw 70 people in the meeting, which is outstanding. Welcome. We're really happy to have you here this afternoon. This is the 2021 Outdoor Recreation Grant Funding Information Meeting. If you're just joining, we're encouraging people to introduce yourself in the chat. When you're ready, you can go ahead and drop your name and your organization and your favorite place in Vermont to recreate. We're going to be here together for the next about hour and a half talking about two of the grant programs that the Department of Forests, Parks, and Recreation has open currently, and those are the VOREC Community Grants Program and the ERSA, or Enhancement of Recreation, Stewardship, and Access Trail Grant Programs. To provide a little context about the Department of Forests, Parks, and Recreation, we are one of 3 departments in the Agency of Natural Resources, and we are primarily responsible for the conservation and management of Vermont's forests, the operation and maintenance of the Vermont State Park System, and the promotion and support of outdoor recreation for Vermonters and our visitors. In addition to the VOREC Community Grant Program and the ERSA Trail Grants Program, the department does run a couple of other programs, including the Recreational Trails Program, which is expected to start a grant cycle later this fall, as well as the Land and Water Conservation Fund Program. And that grant round is still to be determined. There may be one this year. So keep an eye on the website for that. And we won't be getting into detail on those programs tonight. If you would like to find more information about the Recreational Trails Program or the Land and Water Conservation Fund Program, we do have a recreational grants webpage for the Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation, and you can go there to check out more details. I'm Jackie Dagger. I'll be walking us through the agenda this afternoon, and I'm also the program manager for the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaborative. I'll also be managing the VOREC Community Grant Program this year. So you'll be hearing introductions from my colleagues who also have their videos on in just a little bit. But before we get to that, I want to cover a couple of housekeeping items. So as I'm sure you've noticed, you don't have access to video or sound, but you do have access to the chat. At any point during the meeting, please feel free to drop questions to our grant program staff who are present in the chat. We will be answering questions during the Q&A component of this meeting, which will be happening later on. But if there's any pressing questions or you're having technical difficulty of any kind, my colleague Caroline Zalinga is here. She has agreed to provide tech support, and her contact information is up on the screen, and she has also dropped it in the chat just in case you need to reach her. And I would encourage you to write this information down just in case you get booted off for any reason and need to contact Caroline to get back in. Lastly, I want to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded. I will be available online after the meeting for anyone who couldn't join us this afternoon. So certainly if you know of anyone who couldn't join, please feel free to direct them to the grant program websites. And we'll be sharing more about details about those websites here in a little bit. All right, so before we fully jump into the meeting, I have a welcome from the Commissioner of the Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation, Michael Snyder, to get us going and provide you all with a little context for the VOREC Community Grant Program and the ERSA Trail Grant Program and where the funding is coming from this year. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pull up a video for all of us to watch. Give me just 1 second. All right. Here we go. All right, it sounds like there's no audio, so I'm going to try this again. And here we go. Let's see. Sorry about that, everybody. We're going to backtrack. And all right, let's try this one more time.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Michael Snyder, Commissioner of the Vermont Department of Forests, Parks, and Recreation, and Chair of the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaborative, VOREC. Welcome, and thanks for joining us this afternoon to learn more about two exciting and historic opportunities, grant opportunities to support outdoor recreation and its many benefits here in Vermont. The VOREC Community Grant Program and the Enhancement of Recreation, Stewardship, and Access Trail Grants, ERSA Trail Grants for short. I'm thrilled to say that the funding for this year's VOREC Community Grant Program and the ERSA Trail Grants total more than $6 million. These one-time general funds are a portion of the more than $20 million Governor Scott directed this year for supporting outdoor recreation investments. These strategic investments represent a tremendous opportunity for communities to leverage their outdoor recreation assets in so many ways, for short-term economic recovery from COVID-19 and its impacts, the long-term health of our economy, the stewardship of our lands and waters, and the important benefits to health and wellness. just to name a few. I'm sure you'll all understand how exciting this opportunity is, and that's why you're here today. These grant programs have been designed with flexibility in mind to make this funding as accessible as possible. As you'll hear more about shortly, these programs were developed to achieve meaningful impacts without undue burden in the application process. The programs don't require a match, and they include a two-step letter of interest and application invitation process, and grant program staff have planned a series of virtual application development meetings to give you direct access to staff and to answer your questions. This is a landmark moment for outdoor recreation in Vermont, and I look forward to getting outside and experiencing the many great projects that will come from these grant programs. Thank you.
All right. Let me get back here and stop presenting the video. I hope you guys all enjoyed that message and learned a little bit more about the two grant programs we have open right now, the VOREC Community Grant Program and the ERSA Trail Grant Program. I am going to go back over to my slides. And we are going to jump in and do some introductions. So as I mentioned earlier, we have a few grant program staff here this afternoon, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves in a moment. But I just wanted to say before we do introductions that all of the folks helping with the meeting here tonight are people who, if you're applying to the VOREC Community Grant Program or the ERSA Trail Grant Program, or potentially both, these will be people that you interact with, either one or more of us at some point during the application process. So we really wanted to introduce ourselves and say hello and make sure you're familiar with who we are. So for my colleagues, when I call your name, I'd like you to introduce yourself and share your role in the meeting tonight, as well as your role in the grant programs that are open. So Sherry, let's go ahead and start with you.
Hi, I'm Sherry Winnie, and I am serving as the ERSA Trail Grant Program Manager and happy to present an overview of the ERSA Trail Grant Program today.
Great. Is Jessica back with us? All right. Jessica was having some technical difficulty, but we're hoping she can jump back in. She's the Recreation Programs Manager and has been running the VOREC Community Grant Program for the past couple of years. So she's certainly a big part of the grant programs for the Department of Forests, Parks, and Recreation. And if she's able to join our meeting again, I'll give her the opportunity to introduce herself. Kim, why don't you go ahead?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kim McKee, Grant Programs Manager with Forest Parks and Recreation in our business office. I will be playing a big role in ushering the grants through the award development and signature process on the back end, and I provide administrative and financial support to Jackie and Sherry throughout this process. And tonight I'll be here to answer any questions that come up during the Q&A that are more administrative or financial in nature.
Thanks, Kim. Caroline.
Hi, everyone. I'm Caroline Zeilinga. I work in the Commissioner's office here at Forest Parks and Recreation. I support the Commissioner in his work as chair for VOREC, and I'm here to just provide support for this meeting. Hopefully you've seen my contact information either in the slide or in the chat. So if any issues come up during the meeting, please reach out. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, everyone. All right, we're gonna do a little review of the agenda. So we're wrapping up welcome and introductions right now. I am going to provide a review of the VOREC Community Grant Program here in just a minute. After my review, we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, Sherry is going to do a review of the ERSA Trail Grant Program. We have a couple of supplemental application documents we just want to highlight at a high level for you. And then we're going to reserve as much time as we can for Q&A. So hoping for about 20 minutes. We'll start wrapping up around 5:55 and plan to adjourn around 6 p.m. So about an hour and a half together this afternoon. So before I jump into a full review of the VOREC Community Grant Program, I did want to, Sherry and I wanted to provide a reminder about the key grant deadlines. You may have already noticed that the ERSA Trail Grants Program and the VOREC Community Grant Program are, the application deadlines are the same this year. The programs are running in parallel, and both have a two-step letter of interest and full application invitation process that will be running. And they are, just to be clear, different grant programs, but we are running them at the same time because they do share a lot of overlap, and applicants can apply to both if you feel like your project idea is eligible for both programs. But you may want to choose to apply to one over the other after you hear more about the details that we'll be going through tonight. So just as a reminder, the application deadlines, the letters of interest for both grant programs are open now. Those are linked on the grant program websites and will be due by Friday, August 27th. We will be reviewing letters of interest and inviting full applications, so that's very important. Full applications will be by invitation only, and we'll be sharing those invitations the week of September 27th. And then the full applications will be due on Monday, November 15th. We also wanted to give you an idea of our process after full applications are submitted. So all of these are tentative dates, but we wanted to give you an idea of what that process will look like. So we're planning to convene ranking committees to review all full applications the week of December 13th. We'll be making recommendations to the commissioner the week of December 20th. Grant award announcements are expected the week of January 10th, early 2022. We'll plan to prepare grant agreements from February to March of next year, with the expectation that grants will be fully executed by April of 2022. All right, and I know I'm talking a lot. I hope that it's helpful, and we're going to just jump straight into a detailed overview of the VOREC Community Grant Program. Like I said, there will be Q&A here in a little bit, but if you have any burning questions, definitely feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll be getting to them in a little bit. Start just by helping, because like I said, we're running the ERSA Trail Grants and the VOREC Community Grant Program at the same time this year. Just wanted to help clarify some differences that the VOREC Community Grant Program has from the ERSA Trail Grants. So the biggest difference is that the VOREC Community Grant Program is meant to fund community projects that go and can go beyond trails. But the primary focus is to connect outdoor recreation to the community's greater economic vitality. So really, we're looking for applicants to the VOREC Community Grant Program to be able to tell us a very clear story about how your work around outdoor recreation and your outdoor recreation assets connects to your community's economy and how that's helping grow or strengthen that economy. For VOREC, we look for this under the 5 pillars of VOREC. So it's really important to be familiar with these pillars. These are how we're going to be evaluating project ideas. We really want to make sure that applicants to the program are hitting as many of these 5 pillars as possible. So those include grow outdoor recreation related businesses, increase participation in outdoor recreation activities among all demographics, strengthen the quality and extent of outdoor recreation resources, increase stewardship of outdoor recreation resources and environmental quality, and finally, promote and enjoy the health and wellness benefits of outdoor recreation. So again, I want to emphasize it's it's really important to think about these 5 pillars while you're developing your project ideas. We want to make sure that the projects that we end up funding hit as many of these pillars as possible. So briefly, an overview of the 2021 program. Like I said, we are doing a 2-step letter of interest and application invitation process. There's no match required, which you may have heard Commissioner Snyder mention earlier. We're really trying to lower the barrier to apply to these programs. And the letter of interest is a part of that too. We wanted to make it easy for folks to apply to the program. In total, we have $5,100,000 in funding to help Vermont communities fully leverage their natural assets. And we're aiming to fund up to 25 projects across the state of Vermont in several buckets. And that includes things like equity and regional multi-community efforts, as well as local smaller efforts. And we really want to encourage partnerships and large-scale project ideas. So we've set the minimum grant at $50,000 with no maximum. So let's jump into the application requirement details. So a change this year is that this year we're applying nonprofit organizations to apply to the program. In the past, it's only been municipal entities, but we really wanted to expand that pool with the increased funding that we have. And a couple of things to think about, if you're a municipal entity, we are giving preferential consideration to municipalities that are a state designated downtown or a designated village center. Consortiums of municipalities can also apply, but we're asking that consortiums of municipalities designate a sponsoring municipality. And this is important because that municipality will be our main contact. They'll also be the main fiscal agent who will be paying all of the upfront costs before they're reimbursed. For nonprofit organizations, we are asking that you demonstrate support and include a municipal team member. Really, the purpose of including a municipal team member is going back to that narrative that we want to hear from folks. We really want to make sure that the work that your project idea is connected to the municipality that you're working in, that it's clear that the work that you're doing is part of a broader planning goal of your region and is feeding back into those communities. And that really is very important for the VOREC Community Grant Program. Nonprofits, we're also asking that your missions, as the lead applicant, that your mission be compatible with VOREC. So that's things like recreation and conservation, trails and health, among others. And that goes back to those 5 pillars of VOREC I mentioned earlier. Some other applicant info to note, we are asking folks lead applicants to form project teams that reflect the full scope of your project, and that at a minimum, there be a municipal entity and at least one organization that's focused on outdoor recreation. Some other things to know, we are asking applicants to demonstrate that they've completed some prior planning and mapping of outdoor recreation assets. So for nonprofit organizations that might be thinking about that, this goes back to that connection to your municipal partner. You can partner with municipalities to show that you're in line with their broader planning goals. We're also asking applicants to demonstrate that they've identified outdoor recreation as a component of their local economy through a local, regional, or statewide planning effort. For nonprofits, again, that goes back to your municipal partner. We're also asking applicants to demonstrate that they have dedicated staff and or volunteer capacity to ensure long-term success of the project. This is something that we're thinking a lot about. We're aiming to support projects that are long-term and can demonstrate that they've thought about that and have a plan. we're also asking that applicants demonstrate that they have a clear plan for stewardship of their outdoor recreation resources. And this goes back to the 5 pillars of VOREC, and stewardship really is an important piece of that. All right, so eligible grant project activities. Wayfinding and interpretation is an eligible project activity. Environmental stewardship. And I'm going to roll through these. There is additional language online. Just so you know, these slides will be posted online after the meeting, so you can review them in greater detail. But for the sake of getting to the Q&A, I want to make sure we get there quickly. So recreational programming is another eligible activity, as well as land acquisition. But for nonprofit organizations, we just wanted to note that this is limited to municipalities, and an example might be buying and conserving a town forest. Other eligible grant project activities include capital projects, things like signage, kiosks, and maps, and then as well as community marketing, community planning, and administrative support. Although each of those activities can only be a percentage of the project, it can't be the whole project idea. So some eligible project expenses, so things like services of consultants, subgrantees, and technical assistance providers, outdoor recreation infrastructure improvements are also eligible expenses, material and equipment to support outdoor recreation programs, as well as printing, website development, and event support. And finally, securing public access through the acquisition of land, easements, or rights of way. So just some ineligible project expenses and activities we wanted to highlight for you. So I mentioned this before, things like standalone planning aren't eligible expenses or activities. Supporting political activities, alcohol or entertainment expenses, regular annual maintenance projects, unless it's for substantial redevelopment, and projects on state lands are not eligible for the VOREC community grants. Before I start to wrap up, I did want to just give you an idea of what reimbursement looks like. So if you go through, we are invited to submit the full application. You're awarded a grant. I did just want to note that in terms of reimbursement, what you can expect is, like I said earlier, that lead applicant or the fiscal agent will be responsible for paying all upfront costs. Those costs you'll work with us to get reimbursed, and we say that takes about 30 business days. And the other important thing that I wanted to call out for everyone this year is that, if you have an ongoing project that you're applying to get additional funding, or you might have some expenses that you accrued after April 17th, 2021, funding for the VOREC Community Grant Program became available on April 17th. So this year we are able to refund expenses back to April 17th, 2021, if that's something that folks who are granted awards would find helpful. Since we won't be able to refund expenses that were accrued before April 17th, but we can backdate those this year to April 17th. All right, and finally, I wanted to give you a heads up about our application development workshops that are going to be coming up. More information about those is posted on the VOREC Community Grant website. You do have to sign up to be a part of those meetings, and there is a Microsoft form link under Join the Conversation on the website that you can use to sign up. And the first meeting is going to be on Tuesday, August 3rd from 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then the second meeting we'll have is on Tuesday, August 10th from 4:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. And these meetings are really going to be more of an opportunity to ask questions as you're developing your project ideas. We'll get into a little more detail about the full application, but mostly we want to reserve some more time for you to meet with grant program staff and ask any burning questions that might be coming up for you as you're going through this process. So finally, here is the VOREC Community Grant Program website. It's up on the screen, as well as my contact information. And if you have any questions for me that were not getting answered in this meeting, or you want to check in with me about something, please feel free to reach out using the contact information here. And like I said, these slides will be posted on the website following this meeting along with the video. So you'll be able to go back and review the slides and use the links to navigate to the places you're looking for. And with that, I am going to give you guys a break. And when we come back, Sherry is going to be reviewing the ERSA Trails Grants Program. So we're going to say 3 minutes. So let's reconvene around 5:03. Thanks, everyone. Hi, everyone. Just wanted to jump in and welcome you back. I am going to turn things over to Sherry, and she is going to be giving us an overview of the ERSA Trail Grants Program. So Sherry, take it away when you're ready.
Great. Thank you, Jackie. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Enhancement of Recreation Stewardship and Access Trail Grant Program, ERSA Trail Grants. My name is Sherry Winnie. I am the Program Manager for the ERSA Trail Grant Program, and it is my pleasure to introduce you to the ERSA Trail Grants. ERSA Trail Grants will be awarded for community trail projects. We're looking for projects from municipalities partnering with trail organizations and trail organizations partnering with public and private landowners for projects that will ensure long-term public access for trail users. What sets ERSA Trail Grants apart from VOREC and from the Federal Recreational Trails Program? ERSA Trail Grants are for on-the-ground trail projects focused on accomplishing three main goals: improving trail stewardship, improving trail access, and improving accessibility for trail users. Who can apply for ERSA Trail Grants? Nonprofit organizations and municipalities. $1 million is being set aside for on-the-ground ERSA Trail Grants. We're aiming to fund 20 projects around the state with minimum grant awards starting at $25,000. Grant awards will be announced in January at the same time when FPR makes the announcement of VOREC grants. And FPR's goal is to prepare all the ERSA Trail Grant agreements so that they're all fully executed by early this next April, so that projects awarded can start by mid-April, early May in 2022. Here's the categories of projects eligible for ERSA grants. Major trail maintenance and construction projects that result in improved stewardship, access, and trail accessibility. These are the hardcore, on-the-ground, needed trail project work for recreational trails, trailheads, trailside projects, trail linkages, parking areas, trailside amenities, and facilities that will result in either improved accessibility or improving public access or accessibility for new and or underserved populations. What we're looking for is a strong commitment from applicants to stewardship. Some examples include addressing and preventing erosion and infrastructure degradation, rehabilitation of trail segments for safe, sustainable use, adding signage along trails, adding kiosks at trailhead areas, removing blowdowns and obstacles, trash, improvements to surfacing, improvements to trails to get higher levels of accessibility, and helping to develop more universally accessible trails to provide safe and equitable access to a wide variety of recreational trail activities for public enjoyment. Tool purchases and equipment rentals for those kind of projects above. Tools like trail tools, hand tools, like McLeod's, Pickmatics, Rogue Hose, Pulaski, shovels, loppers, saws, fire rakes, hammers, axes, hose, wheelbarrows, rock bars, grip hoists, rock hammocks, you name it, whatever you're working with for trail tools, those are eligible for the projects that you'll be proposing. That also includes safety equipment, safety goggles, hard hats, and equipment rentals, anything like tamping machines or motorized wheelbarrows to make the work easier for a crew, mini excavators, ditch witches, and there's a category for educational projects to develop or improve trail stewardship programs, education to provide the public with information for access or accessibility of trails for new and underserved populations. And then there's another category for the acquisition of trail corridors or trail easements to support the above types of projects. ERSA requirements. You will need written landowner permission or other agreements that assure public access. And you'll need this written permission for the work that you propose to bring in crews, contractors, volunteers, equipment, supplies, and tools. And you'll also need this for the long-term public trail use after the project is complete. You'll also need your project to be planned past the conceptual phase. I'll get into that more so in my application workshops that I'll be holding. But definitely will want you to be planning out your projects with work plans and budgets and things like that. You'll also need a clear plan for annual maintenance and trail stewardship after the project is completed. You'll need to get any permits that you need before you start your project. So we will be asking all ERSA applicants to get a project review sheet from the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation's local permit specialist to find out what, if any, permits you might need. And applicants will need to demonstrate on the full application local community partnerships affiliated with the project. What's not eligible for ERSA? Well, what's not eligible is work on trails where landowner permission or support is not sufficiently given to the applicant, or where the landowner permission is not given for future public access and public use, or where the proposed trail use is not permitted. Also, what's not eligible are equipment purchases or feasibility studies or law enforcement. And nor is a municipal entities or organizations' operational expenses. If you are awarded an ERSA Trail grant, here's a few items about the grant disbursement process that I'd like to share. Grantees are fiscal agents for the project. Estimated budgets submitted with the full grant application are used to help guide eligibility of expenditures. Grantees pay for all the expenses up front and then submit an invoice to the state requesting reimbursement for the project's expenses. I will be hosting 2 of the same virtual ERSA full grant application development meetings. One on Thursday, August 5th from 3 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. and one on Wednesday, August 11th from 6 p.m. till 7:30 p.m. So what I will ask all of you to do is to stay tuned to our website, which will provide a Microsoft Teams link and an option to call in with a phone number and an access code. So you have your option of either a Teams meeting like the one that you're attending today or a call-in option. At these meetings, I will review the full application, cover important points, share resources, and you'll have an opportunity to share a little bit about your project that you're proposing and ask more questions. Vermont has an extensive network of public recreational trails with outstanding statewide and local trail organizations helping to manage and maintain trails all around the state. I noticed from people checking in and listening in and signing up for this workshop, many of the trail organizations and communities that I've worked with over the years, thank you for being here. ERSA funds provide an opportunity for you and your organization and you and your community to improve upon your trail networks on public and private land in ways that are sustainable, in ways that improve participation by diverse communities, and in ways that are committed to stewardship, as well as safe and equitable access to a wide variety of outdoor activities. This concludes the overview of the ERSA Trail Grant Program. Thank you for being here to learn about both VOREC and ERSA grants. I'm now going to turn this back over to Jackie.
Thanks, Sherry. I am seeing a bunch of questions being dropped in the chat. Thank you guys for putting those there. We will be getting to them in just a minute. We'll open it up for Q&A. Before we do that, I'm just going to share a couple of last pieces of information for you all to be aware of. And give me a second here. I just have to get my slides back up. All right, Sherry, can you see that? Oh, it looks like I'm on the wrong one. Sorry, guys, I'm gonna just scroll through really quick. All right, here we go. So just before we jump into Q&A, we did want to give you a heads up about some supplemental application documents. And these really apply if you are thinking about applying with a project idea that involves construction, if it involves earthwork, or a lot of maintenance work. So just at a high level, I'm going to touch on these things in the application development workshops. We'll get into a little more detail. But if you are thinking about applying for any of those activities, please do keep in mind that we will require a project review sheet with the full application. So if you are not familiar with a project review sheet, these are provided by the Department of Environmental Conservation, and they're a tool, or the project review sheet is a tool that documents the permits required to complete your project. So this includes the Act 250 permit. There is a website there where you can find more information. And just to re-emphasize, this document is really important. We will be looking at it if you are invited to submit a full application. So please do take the time to go to that website if you are thinking about construction or earthwork or a lot of maintenance work on trails. The other document that we wanted to just give you a little information about right now to keep in the back of your mind is, if your project is on private property, we are requiring written landowner permission. So we are in the process of developing a written permission template. And written permission could be, like a 1-year agreement for things like grooming. A 5-year agreement would be for annual maintenance, signs, and kiosks. A 10-year agreement for new construction or major reconstruction or reroutes. And just to note that this is relevant up to a capital lifespan of 20+ years, or acquisitions, easements, which should be permanent. Great, so with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen. And I believe we're going to open it up for Q&A. I know there's already been a lot of questions dropped in the chat. Caroline has been tracking those questions, and we're going to get through as many of these as we can. I think we're a little early on getting done with presentations, so hopefully we can answer as many questions as possible, and we'll go until probably around 5:55 or until we run out of questions to answer, but it seems like you guys have a lot. So Caroline, go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay,
Yes.
excellent. So a couple sort of higher level questions to start. Question from Martha. When you were presenting, Sherry, asking if you could show the first couple slides again. I want to understand the difference between ERSA and VOREC grants.
Okay, so my slides. The specific, I'm going to share my screen in a second here, but the specific difference is that the ERSA trail grants are for the on-the-ground trail projects specifically that are focused to accomplish 3 main goals: to improve trail stewardship, trail access, and accessibility of trails. So these are definitely on-the-ground trail work types of projects. I can open up that slide if you'd like. Jackie, would you like to share what sets VOREC apart?
Yeah, and just as a reminder, because it was a little while ago, so the VOREC grants, so if you do think that your project is eligible for both programs, you can apply to both, just as a reminder. That is possible. The main difference between the ERSA Trail Grants and the VOREC Community Grant Program is that the VOREC Community Grants are, we're really looking for applicants to tell a story about how your project, your outdoor recreation assets connect to the economic vitality of your community. So, how does we want you to make it clear to us how the work that you're doing feeds back into your community and specifically the economic vitality of it. I hope that provides some clarity. Sherry, was there anything else you wanted to add on that question, or should we go?
I would just say that the trail grants are what you sometimes call boots on the ground projects. Yeah.
Okay, next question. Are meeting number 1 and meeting number 2 the same information, just at different times?
I would say for the VOREC community grant meetings, application development meetings, yes, the agendas will largely be the same. I think the only difference will be the applicants that choose to attend. I'm aiming to make those agendas pretty broad and provide a lot of time for Q&A. So you can attend both if you think that would be helpful, but I'm hoping folks will come with their questions and that it can be a dialogue to help folks work through their letters of interest and their project ideas.
Great, Jackie. Similar to me with the ERSA Trail Grants, that each session will have the same agenda. We'll cover the same items, so that if you can't make both, choose one that's that you'd like to, because we're not going to cover any different items. The only difference is, like Jackie was saying, for the ERSA Trail Grants are the people that show up with questions. One session might have different questions than another, so they might be insightful for anybody that wants to join and listen in or ask more questions the second time around. Yeah.
Okay, you just answered part of this, but maybe to make sure we're clear on some specifics, can you apply for both a VOREC and ERSA grant? Can you submit multiple projects to either one of these grant programs? And can you apply for the same project to both grant programs?
I'll jump in there, Sherry. So yes, you can apply. Like I said earlier, you can apply to both programs. If you do have multiple projects that you're looking to submit for, that might be something we want to talk about in more detail with you, just to understand what the multiple projects are, and if there are ways that we can streamline your application, so you're not submitting a lot of applications. But that might be something that we should follow up about and talk about in a little more detail. Sherry, anything else to add?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, what I would recommend is that folks that have more than one project in a community to be given some weight. What is the major priority? What's the number one priority? And limit it to just a couple coming in, because the goal is for us to be awarding a couple dozen grants around the state to as many communities possible. So really, if you're thinking that you have one project for your community, maybe it's one for VOREC and one for ERSA Trail Grants. I'm not sure, but I think that would warrant a conversation with both Jackie and I, if you have more questions on that.
Okay, question from Owen. To be clear, nonprofits are required to partner with a municipality, but municipalities are not required to partner with a nonprofit.
That's correct. For the VOREC community grants, we're asking that you partner with a municipal entity, and that's really to show us that the work that you're proposing is connected to the municipality that you're working in, and that there is a dialogue there about how the work that you're proposing feeds back to the economic vitality of the municipality or the region that you're proposing work in. And I'll open that up to anyone else who might have thoughts there. I know Jess may be back with us and have sound, or Sherry, if you have other thoughts to add there from your experience. Okay.
think you covered it for VOREC.
Great.
Okay, a couple more similar questions. Could municipalities and nonprofits form a consortium?
Yes, yeah, I would say definitely yes, project team. I think that would be very appropriate, depending on the project idea that you're working on. But yes, I think project teams could include municipalities, nonprofits, private businesses could be a part of a project team if they have a piece in the project that you're working on.
Jackie, I might just jump in and clarify for the consortium idea that there would still be a lead applicant who is serving as the fiscal agent. The funds would still flow through that one entity.
Okay, Kathy asks, would regional planning commissions be considered a sponsoring municipality, a nonprofit, or both?
That might be a question if Jess has sound for her to jump in on, but and Sherry, you might have a little more information there, and it just might be something we want to think about. I saw Jess show her video, so Jess, go ahead if you have thoughts to contribute.
Sure. So in the state of Vermont, municipalities are defined as subdivisions of the state, and that includes regional planning commissions, school districts, fire districts, different types of municipal districts, park districts. So sometimes communities partner up together and create essentially a municipal park district that happens across. We do consider those municipalities. I would say that, again, the goal of the VOREC community grants are to serve the community's desire towards becoming an outdoor recreation friendly place. So, and RPCs are regional in nature. And so we want to just clearly hear about the project idea really being something that town X, Y, and Z, or one particular town in their region had identified as an economic development or recovery of that community. But they are technically municipalities and eligible to receive both grant sources as long as their project is.
So Jess, it was a little hard to hear your sound, but I think what I got out of that is that yes, regional planning commissions can apply as a municipal entity.
Yes. Yep.
Yes.
As can other types of municipal entities. Sorry if my sound is off. I had technical issues. Park districts, fire districts, school districts, those are all considered municipal entities in the state of Vermont, and they are eligible to apply for both programs.
Okay, and can the nonprofit be the fiscal agent or lead? Natalie asked here.
Yes, I'll just jump in and say, yes, I think, the only thing to consider are those upfront costs, but we're not limiting who can be that lead applicant or that fiscal applicant for VOREC.
Okay. Shelley asks, is the VOREC grant annual application where we might want to wait a year to apply?
So I will say we've been running for the past 2 years. We've had 2 grant cycles, and this is the 3rd year, and we're anticipating that the grant program will continue into the future.
Okay. And is ERSA a one-time grant for this year, or is it offered annually?
This is a one-time grant. It would be nice to get more, but we've been told this is a one-time grant opportunity.
Okay. Ed asks, how much detail will we be able to give in our initial letter?
So Ed, the letters of interest are posted on the grant program websites. I know for the VOREC Community Program, it's pretty high level. It's we're asking that you share information about members of your project team. We're asking for a high level description of your project idea and some other pretty high level pieces of information, but definitely go to the website on the VOREC Community Grant website. It is linked, and just above there's a header that says join the conversation, and it says submit your letter of interest, and that's the link to press to go and check that out. Anything else to add, Sherry, with yours?
We have a letter of interest on the ERSA website as well. It is different from the VOREC letter of interest. So folks that are interested in submitting a letter of interest for the ERSA Trail Grant Program, just go to our section of the website for ERSA Trail Grants and click on the letter of interest, and you'll be able to open it, complete it, and submit it.
Okay, Kayla asks, are projects in the planning phase eligible, or do they need to be ready for implementation?
So I'll jump in for VOREC. So planning, we are encouraging teams to apply for planning activities. It's definitely an eligible activity. We do say that planning cannot be the only piece of the application. So there does need to be some components of the project that are you're implementing. But we are encouraging planning work and very supportive of that.
And with ERSA Trail Grants, we are really wanting to fund projects that are ready to go as soon as possible, starting next spring. We had a whole year through COVID that just due to the just the restraints of being able to get people out there on the ground and contractors out and doing the work that needed to be done, a whole year of maintenance that just got deferred. And so there's a lot of projects out there that we can fund that we know that are ready to go. There's also a lot of projects that we are aware of that have been fully planned, haven't been funded. They're wanting to know when the next Rec Trails program application deadline is for the federal Rec Trails program. So I want to make sure that the ERSA is putting a focus on as many projects that we can get done, and this money is supposed to get those projects completed in hopefully 12 months starting next spring. That's the #1 goal of this program. So I guess I'll leave it at that.
Okay, Nick asked for the VOREC grants, what percentage of a project can planning comprise?
That's a good question. Jess, I might have you jump in there. I haven't, it might be a question I just might need to think a little more about because I haven't yet, but I might leave it at that. That's a great question. And I do have an FAQ on the website. So for any questions that we don't quite answer in this meeting, that will be the place to look for any follow-up. But I do see that Jess turned her video on and she has experience from past grant cycles. So I think she can provide a little bit more information there. Go ahead, Jess.
Sorry, say it again. What percentage of
planning? So because we say that planning
some
can't be the
planning.
full, yeah.
Sure. It's pretty variable, I would say. I think that the way we've been thinking of these funds is trying to be as flexible as possible while still achieving the overall goals of the way that we got this money, which is COVID response and recovery, economic recovery and development, and then trying to meet all the other multiple goals of both funding sources. So in the case of VOREC, we understand planning is an important thing that needs to happen. Unlike other grant programs, we don't require the planning to be a design build type of planning. So the planning isn't like plan X, build X. It can be community planning. It can be getting people together. It can be master planning. But that we want to see that that's not the only thing you're doing. So just not standalone planning. And then really with both grant programs, how does this fit into a complete project or suite of projects, especially in the case of VOREC communities? We see communities coming to us with multiple ideas that all fit together and really get that community where it needs to go in order to achieve its vision for what that economic recovery development looks like with outdoor recreation at its center. So I don't think we have, I don't think we will develop a hard and fast answer to that question. I think it can't be the only thing that you apply for. And the good news is we're here to talk through your ideas and get you to a place feel comfortable if we invited you to apply.
Great. Yeah, and I'll just echo what Jess said. If you do have a question like that where it's not super clear, definitely encourage folks to follow up with me, email me, give me a call, and we can talk more specifically about what you're thinking about.
Okay, Sue asks, are projects on USFS lands eligible for service lands?
I'll take a stab at this first if you'd like, Jackie.
Yeah, go ahead, Sherry.
Okay, so yes, if a nonprofit organization is the applicant and has all the permissions in place, and we would need to make sure that the U.S. Forest Service has already done its environmental documentation. So the answer is yes. We'll get into that a little bit more in the application seminar that I host in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I'll just say for VOREC, we have pretty similar we have similar requirements for that. I think projects on in those sorts of questions will probably be looking to just make sure that all of the right we have all of the right permits, all of the right buy-in from folks. So it will require a little more conversation, and we can certainly talk a little bit more about that in the application development workshops as well.
Okay. Chris asks, for a land acquisition, would a sales agreement need to be in place at the time of application?
Sherry, you might have a response for that, or Kim.
So for the ERSA grants for those acquisitions, we will be providing the state's acquisition policies and right-of-way procedures. And so with ERSA Trail grants, we want to make sure that that acquisition ends up resulting in permanent public access for recreational trail use. And I'll leave it at that. We're going to have resources available for our application seminar and post it up when I get that availability. It'll be posted in our guidance on the website as well.
I saw Jess jump on too. Did you have a comment to add, Jess?
Yeah, I don't think that, well, that's a great question that we probably need to think about more because we have expanded the ability for VOREC grants to be used for acquisitions this time around. In the past, it was possible, but people really used VOREC grants for the sort of legal title search type of getting ready, talking to landowner type of work that is hard to come by in small amounts, but is still needed. This time around, we're imagining it could be those things, but it could actually be part of securing permanent public interest in a property. So we don't necessarily, I would think, need a purchase and sales agreement in place, but we need something. We need to know that this is going to result in an acquisition. And so let's keep talking about what that would look like for individual applicants. Because again, we want to be flexible, but we want to fund projects that are ready to go and are completed within the time frame of the executed grant agreement. So, but I know how acquisition works. It's not always as straightforward as that. So
So yeah, let's keep talking about that if that's something you're thinking about, and that could be another situation where you might want to come to an application development workshop or talk to us a little more directly.
Okay, Karen from Local Motion says we indicated a preference for designated downtowns and village centers. What is the thinking on this? I assume the rec activity doesn't have to happen in these locations. There's a lot of recreation that happens in locations that are neither, but which could have economic impact on multiple communities and whole regions.
Yeah, and I'll probably pass it off to Jess. You might have more to add on like the history behind the preference for designated downtowns. It's certainly towns or folks who aren't designated downtowns are not precluded from applying. We know, and recreation doesn't even need to be in the center of a town for it to be a strong project. But we do have this preference for designated downtowns, and Jess, if you can jump in and share a little more information about the history behind that, I think that would be helpful.
Sure. Yeah, designated downtowns and village centers. Well, as Jackie noted in the beginning, this program is really the brainchild of VOREC, which is an effort that includes our lovely partners at the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, who work with towns across the state. And as we developed the VOREC Community Grant Program, we wanted to ensure that we were working with communities that had the resources that were needed in order to really achieve these types of projects that have done planning, that have teams of people, and the designated downtowns and villages across the state of Vermont. There's a lot of them, so it's not a totally exclusive club. Anyone can join if you fill out an application. It was just a way of recognizing that those places have done a lot of work to bring together stakeholders that would make VOREC grants successful. So it's a way of rewarding applicants to multiple grant programs. VOREC is not the only grant program. I'm reading the list right now. You can get priority consideration for a bunch of different grants, state historic preservation grants, community development program grants, VTrans bike ped grants. So it's a well-established way of showing that we understand that those places have done a lot of work to say, we're ready to really revitalize our communities and think about economic development in a real grassroots kind of way. So that's where our thinking was. Of course, it's just part of your application, and it's preference. It's like some points in an application. So if you're not part of that program, if the community you're working with is not, that doesn't mean you shouldn't apply. It just, again, it's one part of the application, one set of points. That's why we thought that way.
Yeah, so being a designated downtown, it strengthens your application. It doesn't, so you might get a couple of extra points from being a designated downtown.
Okay, next question from Steve. Are backcountry ski touring zones and their supported infrastructure considered trails under the grants?
Yes.
That's an easy one. Next from Simone, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, are grant administration staff hours considered municipal operational expenses, or are these eligible?
Do you have something, Sherry?
I do.
Go ahead.
I'm going to say a small percentage of a grant to make sure that somebody is overseeing the project costs, expenses, cataloging them. This is project specific. So yes, a small portion of that grant administration would be acceptable through the ERSA Trail Grant Program. Kim, would you like to add anything to that?
Not specifically. I was just going to note, I don't think we've identified a specific policy around these programs thus far. So that's something this team should keep an eye to in the FAQ that we post.
Yeah. Yeah, when it comes to project expenses and what communities really have to do, we want to make sure that we build in the flexibility that allows the communities to be able to manage the grant funds being awarded. So, that would be, my thought into it. So thank you for the question.
Okay. Monica asks, how often can the grantee submit for expense reimbursement, and can an ERSA grant be used to hire staff to manage the project?
So, of course, we are going to build that flexibility into. So you could bill a few times during the life of the grant, or you could wait until the project's all done and just bill one time for all the expenses. So we have not set any, this, you have to do it this way. And then the other question that you had as far as, project management. So, so a project manager to oversee the project, we want to always encourage that to happen, to be able to pay somebody to make sure that whatever work plan that you guys are putting in, that work plan is being done according to the specs that the community or the land manager needs it to be done. So, yes.
Yeah, I'd say billing wise, VOREC is very similar, and I'll let Kim add any details about that if she wants. But VOREC would be very similar. It's just once you do submit for reimbursement, it's about 30 business days. And it's usually direct deposit, so it goes straight into your account. So we say 30 business days, but it could be faster.
I'll follow up on that direct deposit note. The state of Vermont does allow for electronic deposit, but grantees need to enroll and provide that information to finance and management. So anyone interested, we can point you to that enrollment form and where it needs to go.
Okay, several landowner related questions. I'll try to put them all together, and then if it's easier for me to break them back apart as we go, let me know. So I'll read a few of them off. Does written landowner permission also include holders of conservation easements? Regarding the written landowner permission forms, can existing forms be used, e.g. if they already meet RTP requirements? And does the landowner permission have to be drafted by a lawyer and be a formal easement, or can it simply be a letter from the owner granting permission to locate the new or improved trail on their land?
Sure, I'm going to let you jump in on that one, or Jess.
I'll defer to Jess, and if Jess isn't available, I'll answer. Jess, do you want to take that on?
Sure. So we will be developing templates for landowner permission for both programs, and we will require in most instances that grantees use templates. Of course, our preference is always permanent permission. So easements, working on public lands, some of their covenant or right of way that conveys a more permanent interest, public interest on private lands. But if that is not possible, we're going to have a 1-year, a 5-year, or a 10-year landowner agreement template that will be ready and available by the time we launch the application phase of both programs. So 1-year agreements will be for things like grooming or just standard clipping or maintenance, things that are very low risk activity. 5 years will be for things like kiosks or signage or things like that. And then 10 years is for new trail construction, major maintenance, etc. And that's permission for both the public access, maintenance access, and the actual investment itself. There are some categories of things that are of a higher level that meet sort of our definition of something that needs a quote unquote permanent permission. So something like a major bridge that has a capital lifespan that's 20 years, that would be a different scenario. But We're trying to be as straightforward and simple with these types of permits as possible and reflecting appropriate investment public side and private landowner side.
Yeah, and I know Jess's sound is not great. I hope you guys got as much of that as possible, but I'll re-emphasize that, you know, the application development workshops are a place where we're going to be talking more about these details. We mostly wanted to give you a high level heads up right now, but the FAQ will be developing some FAQs around this that'll share a little more information. So I hope you could hear Jess, but know that this is not the only opportunity to get information.
Right. Yep. And we will have templates that we're planning on having templates available by the time that we have our workshops sessions, the application development workshop sessions.
Okay, a couple more related. Can a nonprofit apply for trail easement funding in ERSA or VOREC? And can the ERSA trail grants be used for purchasing trail easements? So I don't know if there's more to add there on those pieces.
Yes and yes.
Okay. Kenneth asks, for the VOREC grant, does the project need to be completed by April 17th, 2022?
So we're saying that so we're planning to execute grants early 2022. I believe we said April. We're expecting that those funds will be good for 2 years. I will say, like, it is possible to extend the grant with a good reason. So, you know, if for some reason you can't use the funding within the 2 years, then we would need to reconvene and talk about that. And Kim, I don't know if you have anything else to add there, but, you know, I think 2 years from the execution of the grant.
That sounds accurate. I would imagine we'll land on 2 years or the close of the second field season as the appropriate end date for the first swath.
Okay, a couple of VOREC questions. More VOREC questions. Can you quickly go over the team composition again? And for the VOREC grant, are you funding just 25 projects or at a minimum 25 projects?
So I'll start with the last question. So we're looking to fund up to 25 projects total. So that's maximum, and you know that'll be a minimum of $50,000 with no maximum. So we're looking to fund some larger projects, but also, you know, some projects that are more along the lines of that $50,000 minimum. In terms of the project team composition, so what we're looking for at a minimum is, you know, if you're a nonprofit organization, that you have a municipal partner, and for municipal applicants and nonprofit organizations, that you have at least one outdoor recreation organization that's a part of your project team.
Okay. Chris asks, although there is not a requirement for in-kind match, would this make for a stronger application for either ERSA or VOREC?
Yes, I'll say for VOREC, yes. Having some sort of match just shows your readiness, and so we don't require it, but having things like financial match or, you know, other sorts of match will just show your readiness, and yeah, that just shows us that your project is ready to go. So anything else, Sherry?
Yeah, similar. We know that you know, it's going to help toward readiness and willingness of the project, and it will also show the strength of an organization's volunteers or capacity to partner and get donations locally or something. or what that organization or municipality is actually contributing and how engaged that they are in wanting this project to be done. So it does show a lot more. What we don't want to have happen is that if a community or nonprofit organization can show those areas of strengths without being able to come up with a match, we're not going to require that match. And we know that times are tough through COVID. Last thing that our municipalities want is some nonprofit to come in and say, hey, you have 20% of our project you can match, or vice versa. And it's this is an opportunity to shine the light on your organization, your community as best you can, whatever that might be. So it can help, but it's not a barrier.
Caroline, how are we doing on questions? I know we're coming to the end of our time together, but we do want to answer as many questions as possible. Maybe we can take one more and then we will start to wrap up. We have been keeping track of your questions in the chat, so please know that if we didn't get a chance to answer your question, we will be updating, or for VOREC, we'll be updating our FAQs. I'm sure Sherry is thinking about that for ERSA Trail Grants too. So we will try and get your questions answered, and definitely those application development workshops are another opportunity. But Caroline, is there one last question?
Yeah, there's a handful we haven't gotten to, so I have those all tracked here, as Jackie said. Let's see. Randy asks, I took a note that trails on state land were not eligible. Is that true for both ERSA and VOREC grants?
So it is true for VOREC, and I'll let Sherry jump in for ERSA.
Yeah, so if you have a trail project that's going to cross over into state land from other public or private properties, then we're not going to say, no, you can't come on state land. And if it's a connection, a linkage or something like that, I would suggest that you attend the next workshop and propose your project, or call me after this and discuss it a little bit more. Jess, would you want to say something?
Yeah, the ERSA Trail Grant opportunity is really a chance for especially trail nonprofits to identify priorities to us in the realm of student access. So we want to hear from you, and that's what the letters of intent are for and what the workshops are for. So like Sherry said, I think even beyond connectivity, we tried to be as flexible as possible and not put so many restrictions on these funds in either instance. So with ERSA Trail Grants, all land ownership types are eligible, and it's really about trying to honor what all the trail groups went through this year, especially where the trail systems were very popular. So about you telling us what you need.
Jackie, you think we could squeeze in one more quick question that I'm seeing come up a couple times here?
Yeah, sure. Let's go for it, and then we'll wrap up with some next steps.
Okay. A few questions coming in about the definition of an outdoor recreation organization.
Oh, that's a great question. The way that we're thinking about outdoor recreation organizations, it's a business owner who, well, I don't know if it's a business owner, but it's an organization that works on outdoor recreation and in support of outdoor recreation. So that includes trail organizations. It would include organizations that are working on educational programming around outdoor recreation. Jess, I might have you jump in and share some more thoughts on that, but really it has to do with the natural assets of your community and organizations that are working to provide access to those and to support the use of those.
Yeah,
Jess, do you have?
Sure, we haven't really created a definition. Maybe we need to, but again, the thought was we want to hear from nonprofits working on what communities need around outdoor recreation. So I would think that we'll know when there is, if there's a nonprofit that doesn't fit the definition, but it can be a conservation organization. It can be an outdoor health organization. It can be a trail organization. Or certainly there's like very central types of organizations we were imagining or have worked with on past VOREC grants, but in this case, we are, we changed the eligibility this year, and we did try to make it it needs to be a relevant nonprofit. And so what's relevant to the story that you're telling, what's relevant to outdoor recreation, economic recovery and development for this particular community or sets of communities, that might look different in different places, and we understand that, but you're going to have to tell us if it doesn't seem like a good fit, you're going to tell us why you would be, right? Is kind of how I hope it goes. But if you have questions about your particular nonprofit, this is a great time to reach out to Jackie.
Yeah, I'll echo that. If you do have a question about whether you're an outdoor recreation organization or the organization that you want to work with, it qualifies for that, please definitely reach out and let's connect and talk more about that. All right, well, with that, I know there are some additional questions that have dropped into the chat. Again, the FAQ is going to be a great place to look in the coming weeks, and those application development workshops that Sherry and I mentioned will be coming up in the week of August. What is that week? August 2nd, and then the week of August 9th, I believe. Sherry, I'm looking at you. But yeah, those dates and times are on each of the grant program websites. Please go there. Know that for the VOREC Community Grant Application Development Workshops, you do have to sign up in advance, and it is a Microsoft form that's linked under the Join the Conversation header. Other than that, the letters of interest are up on both grant program websites. They're linked, and those will be due on Friday, August 27th. And Sherry, did you have final words to share?
I want to thank everybody. I see a couple of questions I could answer real quickly. I'm going to type in something in the chat before I end. But I just want to thank everybody, and thank you too, Jackie. Nice job.
Thank you guys for joining. Really, it was great to have you. We're glad to have this opportunity, and look forward to talking with you more as we go through this application cycle.